Welcome to the C.S. Joseph Podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph. Today's episode, we're discussing ESTP, INFP, natural pair relationships. And today's question is, how can I, as an INFP woman, get my ESTP man to commit to me? Oh my goodness. What a question. And it's a great question. It's entirely relevant because it directly relates to everything that we've been discussing right now and teaching within the Ego Hacker community on our Discord server. If you'd like to get on our Discord server, go to discord.gg/Ego Hackers, go through the verification process, get in your roles, and I highly recommend you join our sexuality special interest group. It's just another verification you have to go through while on Discord, and you'll gain access to the most active special interest group that we have within our Discord server, so that you can get educated on how to leverage your masculine energy or your feminine energy so that you can have the best relationships possible in your life. Ultimately, to obviously get rid of fatherlessness and make sure that your children are not victims of fatherlessness, even though you yourself may have been, because that is the primary, the prime directive, basically, Star Trek reference, for the Ego Hacker community. That is why we exist, so that we can have the absolute best possible relationships to remove fatherlessness and have nothing to do with fatherlessness, and basically be leaders for the world to eliminate fatherlessness from the face of the earth. Because I maintain that fatherlessness is the number one cause of pain, grief, and unhappiness for everyone on planet Earth right now. And not only that, if we continue to ignore the risk that fatherlessness poses, well, guess what? We're going to lose the earth. We're going to lose society, and basically it's just going to be, something far worse than what has been anticipated by books like Brave New World or 1984. It'll just basically turn our world into a hell on earth situation that none of us actually want. If someone was to ask me, hey Chase, do you think your children have a future right now? And I would say, no, not really, not with how society is going. And that's why I fight really hard for this community to help lead you folks away from fatherlessness and into the best, most healthiest relationships in your life, and try to lead by example. Anyway, so how can an INFP woman get an ESTP man to commit? Very awesome question. Excellent question. So what is commitment? Commitment is basically a man's devotion. And this is something that we've been learning as the Ego Hacker community right now when we're talking about the books from Zach Rohde, Zakroedde. So he wrote the books Don't Let Her Lead, Irresistibly Feminine, Worthy Woman, and Show Him Your Heart. I highly recommend that everyone read all four of these books. If you are a man especially, you have to read all four of these books. If you are a woman, you don't have to read Don't Let Her Lead. That's the male book. But men have to read all four books. Because men are responsible for taking leadership and leading the relationship. It is absolutely critical that men, take their relationship by the horns, the bull by the horns, and actually lead their women appropriately. And in this case, I really hope the ESTP man is leading his INFP woman appropriately. But here's the thing, if there's issues with commitment, if there's issues with devotion or a lack of devotion from this ESTP towards this INFP woman, perhaps, and most likely, it's because the INFP woman is not being feminine, lacking in her feminine energy. Or perhaps the ESTP is lacking in his masculine energy and actually allowing this woman to lead because he doesn't know how to be masculine. He doesn't understand what masculine frame is. Masculine frame is that you have your life. Your life is like a solar system, and you as a man are the sun in the solar system that provides light, and it provides life basically to the rest of the planets, all those things that orbit around him. And Venus, for example, orbits the sun, and Venus is basically his woman, and she's got to be orbiting correctly, and he has to lead Venus's orbit, right, properly within the context of that solar system. That is masculine frame. But how? How do you have masculine frame? How do you prove that you have masculine frame? It's all about leadership. It's all about masculine leadership. And that is basically taught in these instruction manuals by Zach Rohde. That's why we are going out of our way to teach the Ego Hacker community about this concept known as polarity as presented by Zach Rohde. But from the INFP woman perspective, most women these days are conditioned to be masculine. They are conditioned to be deep in their animus. Their animus, according to Carl Gustav Jung, where he's talking about how women are basically being masculinized ultimately as a result of Western society, and how women are not being celebrated for their feminine energy, but they are being conditioned and celebrated for being masculine. Go to school, go to college, get a job, have a career, spend all of her life, all of her young, fertile years in college and in school, and then also learn how to, have a career, so as to potentially, what society gets out of it, less people. It's kind of, it's actually a form of population control if you think about it, because, women are having way less children as a result. But then they end up having unfulfilled lives, and they end up becoming like 40-year-old spinsters who are just dog moms and cat moms who are alone and don't actually have children. And that's ultimately an outcome that most women out there really want to entirely avoid. And that's what we're teaching these women to avoid within the context of the ego hacker community, right? And we're doing this by teaching them polarity, how to utilize their feminine energy in such a way in order to gain the devotion and commitment of men in their lives, and how important that is. And it's extremely important, right? But how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it as an INFP woman? It really comes down to being vulnerable. The problem is that a lot of INFP women out there have a hard time being vulnerable, because being vulnerable is like, well, dang, I have this cognitive origin of authority. I already have feelings of powerlessness. Would that mean that I have less authority, I have less power in my life if I'm being vulnerable to a man? So oftentimes, INFP women choose not to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is ultimately the key to gaining a man's commitment. It is the key to gaining man's devotion, okay? That's the entire point. That is the entire point. That's what it means the most. And if you want that devotion, if you want that commitment, you got to be willing to show him your heart. You got to be willing to expose your feelings to your man. You got to be willing to state your problems and allow him to choose an outcome for you. But that's extremely difficult for an INFP woman to do, because they are triple outcome, also known as triple control. INFPs, especially INFP women, are extremely controlling, and they're very protective of their comfort zone, right? Very protective. And it's because all they want are outcomes, because they're not going to be motivated to do anything unless they're guaranteed to get an outcome that they are looking for. And that can be a huge, huge problem, especially in the context of relationships. Especially ESTPs, they're also outcome oriented too. And an ESTP man, they have NI inferior, right? They're very insecure about making the wrong choice. They're very insecure about choosing something that's going to lead to a bad outcome. But if he sees an INFP woman that is putting her outcomes above the outcomes of his own NI inferior, do you think that relationship is going to last? Do you honestly believe that you're going to get his devotion as a man? No. No, you're not. It's not, especially not from an NI inferior, especially not from an ESTP. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. Because he's just going to perceive that you're putting your own freedom of choice above him, and then you're actually taking away his choice. You're taking away his choices. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Why would you do that as a woman? That's not feminine. That's actually masculine. That's actually emasculating your ESTP man. And that is harming his ability to devote to you. Why would he devote to you? Because you're putting your outcomes above his. Sometimes you're just going to have to trust in your man. You're going to have to trust that the outcomes that he chooses for you are better than the outcomes you feel that you want, right? And I critic. Because it's like, for example, you take a father takes a child, for example, to the toy store. And the father tells the child, is like, hey, we're going to go buy you a toy from the toy store today. So they go to the toy store. And the child goes into the particular aisle, and the child's like, oh, Dad, I want this. And then Dad says, no, you can't have that. And the child gets all sad. But then what Dad does is reaches up on the top shelf and gets something even better and says, no, I'm going to get you this. And it was the father that chose the outcome for the child. And because the child was respectful and allowed dad to choose the outcome for the child ended up getting something even better. And that's ultimately what masculine energy is. Masculine idealism is an aspect of masculine energy. Masculine idealism wants to give really good gifts to feminine women, right? But it's completely not feminine if the woman is trying to get outcomes out of her man and be the one who chooses the outcome and chooses to control the outcome that she wants. And an example actually right out of the Zach Brody books is like, for example, there's a woman, you could say she's an INFP woman, and she's got 2 children, and she's a stay-at-home mom, and she's had a really hard day. ESTP father comes home, it's her husband, and she didn't even cook dinner, and she's thinking to herself, you know what, I want him to cook dinner tonight. I am really fried, I've had a really bad day, we got a 2-year-old, it's just out of control. So she has 2 choices. An INFP woman who is in her masculine and not her feminine would just go up to her man and be like, okay, you're just going to have to cook dinner. And that is an example of an INFP woman leading her man. That is not feminine. That is wrong. And he is instantly, his NI inferior is going to be like, yeah, you're taking my choice away. You're forcing me to do something I don't want to do. So he's going to react very negatively, and it could actually cause a fight. It actually will destroy his devotion. It would destroy his commitment to you, the INFP woman. So instead, what she needs to do, she needs to be like, hey, to her husband, be like, hey, I had a really bad day, and I feel really bad about myself because I didn't get dinner made on time, and I don't know what to do. I've had a really bad day. I feel bad about this situation. I didn't get dinner done. I'm falling behind. I've just had a really bad day. So what does he do? He's like, okay, put on something nice. I'll take you and the children to a restaurant. Let's go eat out for the night. Notice how that's a better outcome instead of, just him cooking dinner, which is what the original outcome was in her head. You see what I'm saying? Not unlike the father choosing something from the top shelf at the toy store for their child, because that's what masculine idealism is. And you actually, as a woman, can cultivate that masculine idealism. You can cultivate that devotion from a man as a result of behaving in your feminine energy. This is what polarity is all about. This is what we are trying to teach women, in as much as we're also teaching men how to lead properly, but this is how we teach women within the confines of the ego hacker community. That's what we are trying to do. That's what we're trying to do all the time, every single day. This is why we instruct the men in the men's group to read all these books. That's why we're instructing the women to read these books as well, so that they have these instruction manuals specifically on how to be more masculine and also how to be more feminine. Because here's the thing, if you're in your feminine energy as an INFP, that ESTP is just going to be devoted to you all the time, and devoted to only you, and solely devoted to you, right? Who cares about polygyny? Who cares about monogamy? Because his devotion will be yours. Who cares about all that crap? No one cares, because you're going to be a feminine woman. And feminine women are extremely rare, especially in the context of Western society. They're extremely rare. They just don't do it. Extremely rare. So if you have a feminine woman, they're a high value woman. If a woman understands polarity, if a woman understands how to actually talk to a man and how to treat a man, this problem is solved. Because I've talked about this so many times. Women are conditioned on what they should expect from men, which is, outcomes, right? But they are not conditioned, they are not trained on how to talk to men or how to treat men. Men, it's the opposite. They are trained on how to treat women, but they are not trained on what to expect from women. And that's what these books solve. They solve that problem, right? And it's critical. It's absolutely critical that you folks understand how this works. This is literally how life works. This is masculine and feminine energy. And don't forget, masculine and feminine energy at the sexual layer, guess what? It trumps personality type or human nature. It trumps octagram or human nurture. There's more power in masculine energy and feminine energy than there are those other things from a behavioral psychology perspective. If a woman knows how to treat a man, she will be treated well, right? If a man knows what to expect from a woman, he will be able to gain those expectations from her and lead her in such a way where his needs are being met, right? This is why we teach this. So INFPs, if you're having a hard time getting your ESTP man to devote to you, you might want to ask yourself a question. Well, maybe I'm trying to get outcomes. Maybe I'm trying to lead him. Maybe I'm so afraid of losing my authority within the confines of this relationship that I have feelings of powerlessness. And I can totally understand how INFP women feel powerless when they're being vulnerable and exposing their heart to their man. All they have to do is open their heart. Men want to hear how you feel. ESTP men especially want to hear exactly how you feel. They want to hear positive or negative, even if your feelings are negative, because your feelings are not a burden to men. They might be a burden to boys, but they are not a burden to men. Real high value masculine men in their masculine, your feelings matter. They always matter, and you can always have confidence in that. If for some reason a man does not care about your feelings, cut him out. He is not a man, he is a boy. Get rid of him. This is a litmus test that you as an INFP woman can utilize when it comes to understanding how men work, right? And which men should be allowed in your life, right? If a man is not honoring your feelings, if a man is not, then get rid of him. Also state your needs, state your problems without asking for an outcome. Just do that, okay? Without asking for an outcome, okay? Let the ESTP choose the outcome for you. If you don't like the outcome he chose for you, tell him how you feel about it. But do it without stating the outcome you would have preferred. Now, there might be situations where you don't have a choice because you really, really do need an outcome. And if that's the case, then practice permissiveness. Permissiveness is when you just ask, like, you go to your ESTP like, hey, would it be all right if I got this? That is permissive, okay? That's what permissiveness actually means, okay? Ask permission. Learn how to ask permission because he will feel respected. It's proof of you being submissive, right? Submissive and permissive, okay? And then as a result, he'll be committed to you. You will have all of his devotion because chances are no other woman has ever treated him that way in his entire life, and that will set you above all the other women that he has ever had in his whole life. And that is why you will have his devotion over any other woman in his life. That is miraculous. That is something worth fighting for. That is something worth dying for. Never forget that. So, anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening on this episode. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I read all the comments. So, and I'll see you guys on the Discord. Have a good day.